Good morning, everybody. Welcome to St. Mark's. It is so good to be together somehow with other people, whether you are physically in the room with other people or whether because you've got the lurgy, you are at home feeling sick as a parrot and watching this from this sofa, but united with other people in mind and spirit, if not in body. It is great to be together. Well done for making it to Sunday, everybody. It's been a good week, been a fun week around St. Mark's, just to let you know, because not all of us get the privilege of being at all of it. On Monday night, last Monday, we had a whole bunch of intrepid explorers who braved the wilds of the food bank warehouse and helped the team pack a whole load of boxes that went into schools throughout this week as the St. Mark's Meals van was around Milton Keynes. Delivering and welcoming a couple of new schools on board as well. So that's fantastic. Thank you to those of you who packed, and thank you to those of you who keep on praying for Rachel and for Angie as they go out, and the team as they go out on deliveries and meet increasing levels of demand. Then on Thursday, we hosted, with the Child Poverty Partnership, we hosted just over 70 people who came from all parts of society, all across Milton Keynes, and started to ask the question, if we could, what would it look like if we could eradicate child poverty in Milton Keynes? It was a fantastic morning, and just to let you know, Gemma Hyde knocked it clean out of the park. It was fantastic and inspirational and informative, and it was such a joy to watch as the room was captivated by what she shared. And also a whole bunch of people went up to Rachel and Angie and going, "Hey, you're from St. Mark's Meals, we think you're brilliant, we've seen you online and stuff." And to see the different ways which our teeny tiny little village is involved in the city and in leading the city towards fairness and justice. Good job, you all. Hey, this morning it's the start of Advent, the first of our Advent Sunday celebrations, which is great because it means Christmas is coming. So Debs is going to lead us through in a moment with a thought all about Advent. There are some things coming up though. First, click on that button there on the website and you can register for all of the stuff that's coming up over the next month at St. Mark's, including next week in Homes. The week after will be on Saturday at 4 o'clock. We'll be in Holy Trinity Wolverton, which is a really beautiful little church, and we'll have fun there. We'll have some Christmas games, we'll have an Advent thought, we'll maybe sing a couple of carols, we'll have our annual Christmas cracker award ceremony, and then we'll all be home in time for tea. And then the following Saturday, we'll have carols around the campfire down at Heron's Lodge. They're all going to be good, and they're all going to be fun. There's more information on the website. Log on though, because it really log on and register, because it really helps people just know how many people are coming, where, and stuff. And it's great to invite people to carols, which you can do on that button there on the website. Today, your hosts will be able to give you one of these beauties. Woohoo! One per household, one per bubble, depending on your home decor, or depending on whether your host is trying to keep the red ones to themselves, or whether you get there first or last. You can choose an ivory or a red one advent candle, take them home and then light it each evening, not starting today, don't wait till the first, as we celebrate. Oh, here's the thing. As we celebrate getting ready towards Christmas together. And with that, take one of these. We started this little prayer together during lockdown, but actually it's a great prayer just to pray as you light the candle each night, whether it's around the dinner table or in your lounge or up in your bedroom or next to your bath, whatever it is, to pray this prayer together and know that we're praying it together. There is the word. It refers to the wise men as the Magi or the Magi. Nobody really cares, so you say whatever your family wants to. But every year people will buzz me on WhatsApp going, is it Magi or Magi or what? Doesn't matter, Jesus knows what you mean. So make sure you take one candle and one prayer card from wherever you are this morning, and start the Christmas countdown. Also, if you're little and maybe under, 7 or 8 or something, we've got one of these little beauties for you, which has got stickers and it's got a little bit of the story of Christmas that you can read each day as we get towards Christmas. So, thanks for being brilliant this morning. Debs is going to lead us, then after that kick it around a little bit. Kids, there's some craft for you to do, and then make sure we pray for each other and all that's going on around us before you leave your hosts well alone to wash up all the cups. In the meantime, as Debs leads us, have a great week, and may you be filled with hope as you wander towards the baby in the manger.
years ago, I was, years and years ago actually, I was in a carol service in one of the villages near where I live, and I was listening to the night lessons and carols, which I've been listening to or ignoring, or, getting bored through my whole life in small, cold churches. And I was suddenly struck by this figure of Mary in the story. And I, for the first time, I think, perhaps since playing her at age 3 in the Nativity play, I was struck by, I don't know, I kind of felt like I don't know, it's really hard to say, and sort of an affinity with Mary. Like I just sort of felt that come upon me of like, oh, maybe I'm a kind of a Mary. Maybe that's something that I can, I don't know. It's one of those moments of the Spirit, I suppose. I mean, if we take the Bible as being, the Gospels as being true, or at least based on truth, obviously they're all slightly different, as we know, and we talked about that before. We think of Mary was a human. She wasn't a god. She wasn't anything other than a really young woman, a young girl, who was filled with the Spirit. And as many of us have heard talks about being filled with the Spirit, and again, that comes with its own baggage. But what I'd like to think about today is God in us, so inside us. And I'd like to talk about faith. Some people were coming towards me, so I thought I don't really want to see them to see me videoing myself, because honestly I always think people are idiots who do that. So, here I am, a proud idiot right in front of you. So faith, the reason I'm out walking today is because, like many of you, that's where I feel like I can think and feel much more clearly, safely. During lockdown, I took lots of walks, like many of us. I discovered this walk, which I'd never done before that, around our village, just outside the village. I want to talk about faith because that's come up a lot, not necessarily from the front, but it's come up a lot in conversations with people in St Mark's and friends outside St Mark's, and about how that's been really difficult over the last couple of years for various reasons. But I can't talk for anyone else, but I can talk for me, and however much it might be boring to listen to, I thought I'd share that. So a couple of years ago, pandemic hit, ta-di-da, we all know what that was. And the reason I'm not looking at this, by the way, is because I have to look where I'm going. And yeah, pandemic hit. When it first hit, I was like, okay, I can do this. I've lived with anxiety all my life. I know what to do in anxious times. In fact, many of us who suffer with anxiety actually found it a bit an easier time, because there was no socialising, there was no having to go out of your comfort zone, there was no there was uncertainty, but it was different kind of uncertainty. And I think I actually felt like I was in a position to help people, and I think I did. And we did Pray MK, and I was really proud of that. And then kind of going through 2020, it's getting harder. The initial kind of honeymoon period of the first lockdown was over, and I felt like, and suddenly a lot of grief started coming up for me. Again, totally common. Most of us went through that, but I think the difference is that we were doing it on our own, mostly. And again, at the time, I didn't get that, because I like being on my own, I like walking on my own, I like doing things on my own. I'm quite happy in my own company most of the time. And so I didn't realise how much I was missing community until really months later. Anyway, couldn't really do that on Zoom. It was how it had to be, and we did our best. A lot of grief came up, and with that grief and that heartbreak, and again, we all have that. We all have grief and heartbreak, and it wasn't unusual. If you want to know more about that, you can ask me. But basically, had a lot of grief come up, and it was difficult. And I wrote poems about it, and some of you have read them. And I thought I had to steer around this poetry book and make some positives, because I couldn't find many, or at least, no, I could find lots of beautiful things, which is one of my practices, I suppose, although habits, or, the only thing that works. Lots of beauty in the outside world, in this place. Look at this, for heaven's sake. I didn't struggle for finding consolation and beauty, but what I couldn't find was God. And I was working for a church, our church, and I felt when I was writing this book, I need to sort of turn it around at the end and make it kind of, but don't worry, everything will work out, which is, again, a sort of posture that I have always had, and it's necessary, and I think often most things do work out, but it wasn't in the way I'd hoped. And I think a lot of my grief was to do with disappointment, and my life not turning out how I'd thought, or perhaps how others had suggested it might. I'm unusual, I have an unusual lifestyle, and I think that grief made it difficult, and that disappointment made it difficult for me to trust God anymore. And I felt like, it's an absence of God, like I can't feel God. Oh well, we've had this before, you can't feel God, doesn't mean he's not there. We just have, dark light of the soul, la la la. I know the quick answers, always have. But it just wasn't enough, and someone telling me, oh, don't worry, it's God's there, la la la. Anyway, I had some chats with some friends, and that helped a bit, and me and my friend wrote some songs about it, and I read a book by Scott Erickson that was Say Yes to Not Giving Up on Yourself, and it was about disappointment and things not turning out how you thought, and what to do then, like what to do with that. And one of the things that I read in that was that a lot of times, maybe it was something else that he wrote, anyway, a lot of times our struggles with faith in anything, and that was what was helpful for me, was he was thinking about faith. It's difficult. It's hard to have faith in somebody when they've let you down, or when they've disappointed you, and it's hard to trust them. And actually, I started to realise that perhaps trust was the problem, rather than faith, which sounds similar, but it's not about belief in God for me. It's complicated. It's more about, can I trust the God that everyone told me about when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, when I was, up until very recently? Can I trust that God? And like many of us, I've been trying to renovate things in my soul and my faith. And I'm really, I'm a truth teller. Like, I love telling the truth, and I find it difficult to tell something that I don't quite 100% believe in. So that's been kind of difficult, and that's why I haven't wanted to speak at St Mark's for a little while. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I absolutely know, I thought I was. And then, we start chatting, and we start thinking about things, realise that's absolutely not the case. Anyway, so it was more about, do I trust that God? And trying now to discover that perhaps that God wasn't real, and the God that I was told about, and bits of it were true, bits, I'm not saying that I was told a pack of lies or anything, but I think that when you come to a difficult time in your life, I remember thinking over and over again, the faith, the words, the things I've used and found helpful up to now just aren't enough. They're not big enough for this pandemic. That's not enough, and I'm sure and I know that's the same for most people. And so I think I'm learning that God perhaps is bigger than what I thought. And that isn't easy, because that means basically saying, okay, well, I'm not sure if I believe that, I'm not sure if I believe that, la la la. Anyway, one of the things that I've learned as well is about bodies. Our bodies are intelligent, and they know things that we maybe don't realise. As I sort of since about, I don't know, the spring sometime, I've had some injuries over the last couple of years with my back, so I haven't been able to walk as much, which has been annoying. Anyway, I started doing Pilates and prayer, and it's really simple. It's just doing some Pilates with kind of a thought or a couple of thoughts threaded through it. So you do the movements, and very gentle movements, and you think about these ideas, prayers, thoughts as you do it. And I wouldn't say it's not like life-changing on a grand scale. I think in small ways it helps. And you know, then I'm remembering, when I'm out walking, you know, my body knows things and it tells me, or I don't know, something. You need to speak to my colleague and esteemed friend Angie about that, but perhaps she will talk about that. But it's that intelligence. And then I want to get back to Mary. So Mary, our friend Mary, young woman, probably only just started her periods, like really young. And I wonder what she thought and how she felt when the angel, when the angel came. But then I'm thinking, did she really believe it? Like, you were thinking, I mean, it's hard to ignore like that. But I think after that, I'm sure you know, really, it's physical. It's there. Like that happened through the Spirit of God, and not through anything else. And so I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is that stuff happens in our body, in our physicality, that we can't sort of help. And so I don't know. I think a lot. And for a while I was trying to work out the difference between feeling in our emotions and feeling stuff in our gut, in our body. And to me those are really difficult to pull apart, as I'm sure they are for most people. But you know, this is the sort of things I think about. And then when I was doing Pilates and prayer a few weeks ago, one of the prayers was that old favourite, be still and know that I am God. And the lady running it, Emma, was going over that whole passage. It got to the be still and know part, and I thought, you know what, that's a different kind of knowing. That's a different kind of knowing, knowledge. And with this kind of faith, reorganisation that I've been trying to do, I've been reading a lot, and since the beginning of this year, about it, or at least it might help a bit, but it's not going to change it. Like, you know, finding out more and more, like, was the crucifixion real? Can we trust the Bible? All these things, like these sort of, apologetics. Sorry about the jargon. Can't help it. It's not about that. It's about that kind of other thing, which can be used other too much. But it's this. It's this. It's what a friend of mine, Andreas, who's a musician, a jazz musician, he talks about something called cantus firmus, which is in music, it's the tune that we're all joining in with when we make music. So if you listen to some music and you think, wow, that's magic, that's something I'll hold with me, or like, it just feels like, I mean, I can't think of a better word than magic. It feels like magic. It's almost like the musicians, and I as an artist, I know how this feels for writing. I know that when I'm writing, and I've heard this from countless writers and artists, that I am just helping whatever it is to come out onto the page, into the air and into the sound around you, that kind of thing. And people call it the flow, or they call it inspiration, or they call it and I love that idea of cantus firmus, that kind of, that thing in the air that we join in with when we make art. And it's not just art, that's where I'm coming from. You know, perhaps it's inspiration when you're designing something in engineering. I struggle to Another thing I wanted to talk about Mary was vocation, and that's something else that comes up a lot, you know, and I've always been taught, I think, in a healthy way, that vocation is anything. It doesn't mean you have to be a priest, although people have suggested that to me. Well, it doesn't mean your vocation isn't like your job. It's not your, I mean, it can be your job, but it's not necessarily a thing you do on purpose. I think often vocation is something that you kind of do by accident, like you don't know you're doing it. So like thinking about Mary, like was her vocation to be Jesus's mum? Was that the only thing she was asked to do, the only thing that she was drawn to, or her passion? All of you here are parents. I'm the only one, I think, at St Mark's, and the only adult at the moment who isn't a parent. We can talk about that another time. You know, are you just a parent? Is that your only vocation? The fact that I'm not a parent, does that mean that mothering or parenting can't be my vocation? I think we're really, again, we talk about this a lot, we're really good at putting things in boxes and categories, and that's human. And there's no point in beating ourselves up about it. That's what we do. You know, we like to be with people who are like us. And we other things really easily. We've othered this and ignored it. And we know, don't we, that there's loads of grey area around vocation. And I'd like us all to think about that in terms of Mary. And like, what else did she do like with her life? You know, I mean, we know she was there at the end of Jesus' life. He was 33 then. She was perhaps, I don't know, she was probably only in her 40s. What did she do after that? You know, yes, she was perhaps she was kind of one of the apostles. The women apostles are only mentioned a couple of times. I imagine she was. I mean, why would she was? You know, her child died. She's got to talk about it. She's got to say, well, really worth it, you know. What else did she do? I don't know, just it'd be nice to think about that. And Joseph too. I mean, we know he was a carpenter, because of course, you know, men have jobs, women don't, la la la. But that's all we know about him. You know, we don't know much about them. Anyway, so I was thinking about vocation. I was like, is that the only thing about Mary? You know, she was, but there's loads of other things we can guess. We can guess she was poor. We can guess she was ostracised because of having a baby out of wedlock, or at least when she was only promised to be married. We think. I mean, again, I've heard so many sermons about this, and I'm a bit like, I can't remember what's right and wrong anymore. Doesn't matter. The main thing is she was young. She wasn't married yet. She had a baby. I'm sure that wasn't ideal. You know, there's lots of stuff about her story that wasn't ideal. In fact, most of it. In fact, none of it was ideal. And so let's think about our vocation. So I think part of my vocation, and these will change and they will grow, and I think part of mine for many years has been trying to make space for people and trying to make space for ideas and thoughts. And I remember saying this to Paul years ago. I think that I'm meant to make homes. And it sounds totally bonkers. To be a homemaker has got some connotations that we don't really want to explore, like 1950s housewife. I'm not a housewife. I'm not even a wife. I do own a flat. I don't live in it. You know, I don't own my home. But I strongly believe that's what I'm meant to do. She would have had passions, and I think that's the thing, is that vocation isn't about a job necessarily. It can be about an attitude. You know, I can't do it all the time, but I try to. Well, I smile at people in the street, and I try to. I mean, people do this stuff. I'm just trying to think. It's just about like kind of an attitude. Like I may be wrong, but like, I'm trying to think of another example. You think of an example. Like, what's your vocation that isn't your job necessarily? If it is your job, explain that. Explain why that's your vocation. Think about that. And maybe that knowledge of things, of truths that aren't You can't reason and you can't feel, but you know. Yeah, my arms are aching, so I'm going to stop now. Good luck with that. Bye.